Hi, my name is Cindy and the name of my shop is Molasses Creek Woodcraft. Welcome. Today I'm going to be starting on making some knife handles for a kitchen knife, and before I get into showing you any of this, I'm going to stop and move the camera closer so you can see what we're working with. Okay, I'm starting with these knife blanks that I have made from Wenge, spalted maple, and Purple Heart. Now, when I made these, I milled them down to about 5/8 of an inch thick. That was just so I would have a little more gluing surface. But I want to get them down to about 3/8 of an inch thick, so I need to mill down and off about another 1/4 of an inch to get these down to about 3/8 of an inch thick. Now, this is the knife that they're going to be going on. And obviously when you're working with a knife like this, you want to make sure you protect the blade, cover up the blade to both protect the blade and to protect your fingers, so you don't want to cut your fingers off. And I've made cardboard templates or poster board templates of the handle, so I have those to work with and has marked where I need to drill the holes. Okay, now the center hole here in the handle is going to be getting, not sure if that's going to focus, this mosaic knife pin that's about 5/16 of an inch in diameter. And the front hole and the back hole are going to be getting these push rivets, stainless steel push rivets. Okay, so this is where we're at to start with. The first thing I'm doing is milling these down to 3/8 of an inch thick. To do this, I have a fence on my oscillating spindle sander that's perpendicular to the spindle, and by gradually moving that fence in, I can mill these down to 3/8 of an inch thick. So essentially this turns my oscillating spindle sander into a little miniature drum sander. Now, I'm not claiming this is the best way or the fastest way to do this, but it is one way to get it done. And I just wanted to show you here on my table saw that they can come out very flat from sanding them this way. So now I have my knife scales, and in this case I'm using some G10 spacers that are 0.04 inches thick. The spacers will add a little stability to the knife scales, but mostly I just think they look nice. And so just to show you how these are going to get glued on, the spacers will go on the inside first, and then the knife scales will go on the outside of them. And that's just kind of a real rough look at how they're going to end up. So at this point I just have some 120 grit sandpaper taped down to the top of the bench, and I'm roughing up the G10 scales, and I'm going to rough up the knife scales as well. That's just to get those ready for gluing. And at this point I'm going to wipe them down, both the knife scales and the G10 scales, with acetone just to get them ready for gluing. So the two-part epoxy I will be using for this project is called Blade Pro. I picked this up at Rockler, and as always I have to say I am not sponsored. I paid for this myself. The first part of the gluing is just to glue the knife scales onto the G10 spacers. I'm doing this on my table saw because that's the flattest surface I have. This will ensure the scales and the spacers stay perfectly flat as they bond together. Now I have the scales and spacers glued together, and I'm going to use way too much double-sided tape to perfectly line them up and temporarily stick them together. Okay, now I'm going to use my poster board templates to draw out where I want to cut these down and to mark where I will need to drill for the 3 holes. And just a little shout out here to my grandfather's rosewood handled awl for doing the hole punching. At this point, I'm going to drill out the 3 holes I need. You don't necessarily need to do it in this order, but by doing this now, it's a little safer in case I happen to get some chip out from drilling. If I do get any chip out, I'll be able to sand it down later. Now I'm going to trim these down to about 1/8 of an inch outside the lines for the knife handle. It probably would have made more sense to do this on a bandsaw, but I had my scroll saw handy, so that's what I used. And there we go. I've got my knife handle trimmed down. There's still a little more fitting I need to do. I have stainless steel pins holding the scales together, and first I need to sand down the front so it matches up to the bolster on the knife. So with that fitted, then I want to sand down the front of those scales a little bit to match up to where that bolster goes. It's a lot easier to do that now than later. And here you kind of see what they're going to look like when they get glued on. I did not record the mixing of the epoxy and the gluing of the handles because honestly it's messy and I just don't have enough hands. This is what the handles look like when they're glued on, and I will leave them to harden. And there we have a nice blocky looking thing that's starting to look like a knife handle. Now I'm going to sand these blocky looking things down to get rid of that extra 1/8 of an inch that I left and get them down to the stainless steel tang of the knife, and that's what that looks like. So now it's time to start shaping these down to a nice comfortable round shape to fit in your hand. I'm starting this with some 60 grit sandpaper backed with some black duct tape, and it's just a matter of patiently doing a little hand sanding. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I was working on 3 knives as I was recording this, so it was a lot of hand sanding. But eventually I got them all down to nice shapes and sanded down to 800 grit. Now I'm finishing these the same way I would finish my cutting boards, and the first part of that is just to soak the handles in mineral oil until they can't absorb the mineral oil anymore. And the next part is to apply a mixture of mineral oil and beeswax. I let this sit for at least 15 to 20 minutes and then come back and buff it off with a soft cloth. And here's the final beauty shot of the 3 knives. And you may have noticed the cutting board I was also working on in the background. One of these knives is going to a matching cutting board. They're all a little bit different, but the process is the same. Now, this is the part of the video where I thank everybody for watching, and I truly do mean that. I truly do appreciate anybody who takes the time to watch my videos. I'm always asking people to click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell icon. That really helps to grow the channel. YouTube looks at the algorithms for those kind of things, and having people click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell icon, it helps a lot to help grow the channel, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you all for watching. I do appreciate you all.